Eleanor Dravik stood by the kitchen counter, stirring sugar into her tea. The house was quiet except for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. She liked mornings like this, peaceful, calm. The teapot still steamed gently, filling the kitchen with its faint, comforting aroma. But her peace was broken when the doorbell rang. Eleanor wiped her hands on a towel and made her way to the door. On her porch stood a delivery man, holding a small brown package. He smiled politely as she signed for it, but as he handed it over, his smile vanished. He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Ma'am," he said nervously, glancing over his shoulder. "Don't drink the tea on your table." Eleanor froze. "What?" she asked, her voice trembling. The man swallowed hard, clearly uncomfortable. "I saw someone, your daughter-in-law, I think, through the window. She poured something into your teapot. I don't know what it was, but it didn't look right. Please be careful." Before Eleanor could say anything else, the man stepped back, tipped his cap, and walked quickly down the path toward his truck. Eleanor stood there, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. For a moment, she just stared at the package in her hands, unable to process what had just been said. Then she slowly turned back toward the kitchen. The tea was still there, steam curling lazily toward the ceiling. She stepped closer, her stomach churning. She lifted the teapot lid and took a cautious sniff. The smell was slightly different, bitter, strange, almost metallic. Not at all like the herbal tea she had brewed just an hour ago. Her hands shook as she grabbed the pot and carried it to the sink. She poured the tea out, watching the dark liquid swirl down the drain. For a moment, she thought she saw something grainy at the bottom of the sink, clinging to the porcelain. "What is happening?" she whispered aloud, gripping the edge of the counter. She thought back to the last few weeks, the subtle questions Claire had been asking about her will, her estate, the house. Michael had brushed it off as normal curiosity, but now Eleanor's mind raced. Could Claire really? No, it was too awful to think about. But the warning had been too specific to ignore. Her fingers trembled as she grabbed her phone. She almost called Michael right then and there, but something stopped her. What if he didn't believe her? What if Claire had a good explanation, and she ended up looking paranoid? No, she thought, setting the phone down. She needed to be sure. Eleanor paced the kitchen, thinking. The delivery man's frightened face was burned into her memory. She had trusted Claire when she married Michael. She had given her access to the house, to their family dinners, to their lives. And now, she felt like a stranger in her own home. Finally, Eleanor sat down at the table, staring at the empty teacup. Her mind was no longer fogged with fear. It was clear, sharp, and full of quiet anger. If Claire had truly done this, Eleanor needed to catch her, not with shouting, not with accusations, but with the truth. She would confront her, but she would do it in a way Claire couldn't escape. Eleanor picked up her phone again, but this time she didn't call Michael. She sent a group message to both him and Claire, inviting them to dinner that evening at a nice restaurant downtown. She ended the message with a calm little smiley face, as if nothing was wrong. When she put the phone down, Eleanor felt her heart still pounding, but now there was something else, determination. She wasn't just going to find out what was in that tea. She was going to make sure her son heard the truth with his own ears. Eleanor stood in front of the restaurant mirror, smoothing down her dress. Her reflection looked calm, almost too calm for the storm that swirled inside her. She could still hear the delivery man's whisper from that morning. "Don't drink the tea on your table." Those words had not left her mind for a single moment. She inhaled deeply. Tonight, everything would be revealed. When she finally walked toward the dining room, her heels clicked against the floor, steady and firm. She had chosen to arrive 15 minutes late, giving Michael and Claire time to settle in before her. This wasn't just a dinner, it was a test. Through the glass doors, she spotted them at a corner table. Michael was relaxed, scrolling on his phone, but Claire was stiff, her shoulders tight, her eyes flicking nervously toward the entrance every few seconds. Eleanor's lips tightened. That reaction told her everything she needed to know. She pushed open the door. The sound of her heels echoed as she walked into the restaurant. Michael's head shot up, and he smiled warmly. "Mom, finally. We thought you weren't coming." "But Claire." Claire froze. Her face drained of color, her hand gripping the handle of her teacup, so hard that her knuckles turned white. As Eleanor approached, the cup slipped from Claire's trembling fingers, smashing onto the table and spilling tea across the linen cloth. The entire restaurant turned their heads at the sound. Silence spread like a wave. Eleanor pulled out her chair and sat down slowly, folding her hands in her lap. Her eyes never left Claire's face. "Mom," Michael said, frowning at the mess. "What's going on? Claire, are you okay?" Claire forced a smile, but it was brittle, broken. I just lost my grip. That's all." Her voice wavered, too thin, too fragile. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. "Claire, why don't you tell Michael what you put in my tea today?" Michael blinked, confused. "What tea?" He looked between them, bewildered. "What's she talking about, Claire?" Claire shook her head quickly, her eyes darting left and right as if looking for an escape. "I don't know what she's saying. I never." Eleanor didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Don't lie. I was warned. I poured it down the sink. So tell him. Right here. Right now." Michael's confusion grew into alarm. He sat straighter, his face hardening. "Claire, is this true? What did you do?" Claire's lips parted, but no sound came. Her hands trembled as she clutched at her napkin. Finally, she stammered. "I didn't mean anything bad. It wasn't what you think." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Then explain it. Explain why a delivery man saw you pouring something into my teapot. Explain why you panicked just now when you saw me alive, sitting here in front of you." The words landed like thunder. The other diners pretended not to listen, but the air in the room had shifted. Even the waiter who had been about to approach stopped mid-step and turned away. Michael's voice broke the silence. His tone was low, dangerous, one Eleanor had rarely heard from him. "Claire, answer her." Claire's face crumpled. She covered her mouth with her hand, tears welling in her eyes. I was scared, okay? I was scared of being left with nothing. I only wanted Michael to see that your memory was slipping, that you weren't fit to manage everything anymore." Michael recoiled as if she had struck him. "What?" Claire's tears spilled down her cheeks. "It wasn't poison. It was just something to make her sleepy, confused. If she seemed unstable, we could take control of the estate. I didn't mean to hurt her, I swear." The words hung in the air like a confession in a courtroom. Eleanor's chest tightened, not out of surprise, but out of sorrow. She had suspected Claire's greed, but hearing it aloud, seeing her son's face break with shock, it was worse than she imagined. Michael's chair screeched against the floor as he stood. His face was pale, his eyes filled with disbelief and anger. "You tried to drug my mother? To make her look crazy? Claire, how could you?" Claire reached out for him desperately. "Michael, please. I only did it because I love you. I was afraid we'd never have control, that we'd always live under her shadow." But Michael pulled his hand away as if her touch burned him. Eleanor sat still, her expression calm, almost regal. Inside, her heart broke for her son, but she knew this had to happen. The truth had to come out in front of him. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Claire's sobs filled the silence, echoing too loud in the quiet room. Michael turned to his mother, his jaw tight. "Mom," he said quietly, "we're leaving. I need to think." Eleanor nodded, her eyes never leaving Claire's face. "Do what you must, Michael. But remember what you've seen tonight. Remember the truth." Michael walked out without another word. Claire stumbled after him, her heels clicking frantically against the floor, her pleas fading into the night. Eleanor stayed seated for a long moment, staring at the shattered pieces of the cup glinting under the restaurant lights. It wasn't just a broken cup. It was a broken trust, and it could never be repaired. The car ride home was silent. Michael's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Claire sat in the passenger seat, sobbing softly, reaching for him again and again, but he kept pulling his arm away. "Michael, please listen to me," she whispered, her voice broken. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I thought if your mother seemed weak, we could finally take control. I was desperate." Michael's jaw clenched. His voice came out hard, sharper than she had ever heard. "Claire, you put something in my mother's tea. Do you even hear yourself? You tried to drug her." Tears streamed down Claire's face. "It wasn't poison. It was just a sedative. Enough to make her confused for a while. If she looked unstable, the lawyers would say she wasn't fit to manage the estate. We could finally live without her controlling everything." Michael slammed his hand against the steering wheel. The sound made Claire flinch. "Control? You think my mother is controlling because she's careful with what my father left behind? That's her right. That's her life. And you," his voice cracked, "you wanted to make her look insane just so we could get the money sooner." Claire covered her face, her sobs muffled. "I did it for us. For our future. Don't you see? We could have had everything." Michael pulled the car to the side of the road and turned to her, his eyes burning with disbelief. "No. You did it for yourself. You couldn't wait. You couldn't respect the woman who raised me. You wanted to steal her dignity. Claire shook her head furiously. No. I love you, Michael. I only wanted what's best for us. She'll never hand anything over to you while she's alive. She treats you like a boy, not a man. I thought, her voice broke. I thought if she looked unfit, you would finally take your place. Michael's face twisted with anger and pain. So your plan was to humiliate her? To destroy her? That's your idea of love. Claire's words stumbled out between sobs. I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd stand by me. Michael leaned back in his seat, staring out the windshield. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. He felt sick at her words, sick at himself for not seeing the signs earlier. At the same time, Eleanor sat alone in her living room. The house was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock. She stared at the empty teacup still sitting on the counter from earlier that day. The memory of the delivery man's whisper replayed in her mind. She had trusted Claire. She had opened her home, her heart. And now, she saw her daughter-in-law's true face. The phone rang. It was Michael. His voice was low, heavy, and broken. Mom, she admitted it. She said it wasn't poison, but a sedative. She wanted to make you seem confused, unstable. She wanted the estate in my name. Eleanor closed her eyes, pain tightening her chest. I know, she whispered. I saw it in her face tonight. I just needed you to hear it from her. There was a long silence. Then Michael said, his voice trembling, I don't know what to do, Mom. I don't even recognize the woman I married. Eleanor's voice was steady, though her heart ached for her son. Then you do what you must. Protect yourself. Protect the truth. Don't let her lies destroy you. Meanwhile, Claire sat alone in the dark bedroom, her body shaking as she cried. She knew her world was falling apart. She had gambled everything, her marriage, her place in the family, and now she was losing it all. The next morning, Michael confronted her again. His eyes were cold, distant, as if he were staring at a stranger. Claire, he said, his voice flat, I can't forgive this. You didn't just betray my mother. You betrayed me. Claire dropped to her knees, clutching his hands desperately. Please, Michael, don't leave me. I'll never do it again. I was just scared, I swear. Michael pulled away, his face full of sorrow. You tried to ruin the woman who gave me everything. How could I ever trust you again? Her sobs echoed through the house, but Michael walked out, slamming the door behind him. That same day, Eleanor visited her lawyer. She sat down, her back straight, her voice calm but firm. I want to change my will, she said. And I want to make sure no one can ever challenge my mind or my memory. Not now, not ever. The lawyer nodded, understanding her fear. Eleanor signed the new documents with a steady hand. For the first time in days, she felt a small wave of peace. She had faced the truth. She had faced the betrayal. And she had chosen to protect herself and her son. But deep inside, a wound remained. Because betrayal from an enemy hurts. But betrayal from family, it scars forever. The days after the dinner felt heavy, as though a storm cloud had settled over both Eleanor's and Michael's lives. The truth had been spoken, but the wound it left behind was deep. Michael hadn't returned home that night. He had slept on his mother's couch, staring at the ceiling until dawn. Eleanor had walked into the living room early in the morning and found him sitting there, his face pale, his eyes red from sleeplessness. You don't have to say anything, she told him gently, placing a cup of coffee on the table. I know this is breaking you apart. Michael rubbed his face with his hands. I just don't understand, Mom. How could she do that? I thought Claire loved me. I thought we were building a life together. And all along, she was planning to destroy yours. Eleanor sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Greed blinds people, Michael. It makes them forget love, respect, even family. She chose her path. Now you must choose yours. Michael didn't answer right away. He stared into the distance, his jaw clenched. Later that day, Claire showed up at Eleanor's house. She stood outside the door, her makeup smudged, her eyes swollen from crying. When Eleanor opened the door, Claire immediately dropped to her knees. Please, she begged, her voice trembling. Please, Eleanor, forgive me. I wasn't thinking straight. I was scared. I only wanted security for me and Michael. I didn't mean to hurt you. Eleanor's face was unreadable. She had never looked colder, stronger. You tried to take away my dignity, she said softly but firmly. You tried to make me appear weak, confused, unfit. Do you understand what that means, Claire? You weren't just after money. You were ready to erase who I am. Claire wept harder, pressing her forehead to the floor. Please give me another chance. Don't let Michael hate me forever. I'll do anything. Eleanor's voice hardened. Forgiveness is not mine to give. It is Michael's. But trust is gone. And once it is gone, Claire, it never comes back. Michael appeared in the hallway, his face set like stone. He looked down at Claire, his wife, who was still kneeling on the floor, sobbing. Get up, he said coldly. Claire looked up, her eyes desperate. Michael. But he cut her off. No. I gave you my heart. You gave me betrayal. You tried to destroy the one person who has always been there for me. I can't live with you anymore. Claire gasped, as though his words had taken the air from her lungs. She reached for him, but he stepped back. Michael, please. Don't throw our marriage away over one mistake. One mistake. His voice rose for the first time. You plotted to drug my mother. You called that love. You called that protection? No, Claire. That was greed. And greed has no place in my life. Claire broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. She begged, pleaded, but Michael's decision was final. He opened the door and pointed outside. Leave, he said. Her cries followed her as she stumbled out of the house, her footsteps echoing down the driveway. She didn't look back. That evening, Eleanor sat across from her son in the quiet living room. For the first time in days, the silence felt peaceful. Michael stared at his hands, his voice soft. I can't believe it's over. Part of me still wishes she had been the woman I thought she was. Eleanor nodded, her eyes full of sorrow but also strength. We all wish people were better than they are. But the truth saves us, even when it hurts. Michael's eyes filled with tears. He leaned forward, resting his head against his mother's shoulder like he had as a boy. I'm sorry, Mom. Sorry for not seeing it sooner. Sorry for letting her into your life. Eleanor wrapped her arms around him. Don't blame yourself. You loved her, and there's no shame in love. The shame is hers, not yours. The days turned into weeks. Claire's name disappeared from their conversations. Michael filed for divorce quietly, and Eleanor made sure her estate was sealed so tightly no one could ever manipulate it again. But the memory remained. The delivery man's whisper, the tea swirling down the drain, Claire's face when Eleanor walked into the restaurant alive and well. One evening, Eleanor stood by her window, watching the sunset. She thought about her husband long gone and the life they had built. She thought about the fortune he left behind, the fortune that had almost torn her family apart. And then she thought about Michael, still standing, still by her side. That was what mattered. Eleanor whispered into the fading light. You almost lost me, Michael. But you didn't. And now we will never let anyone break us again. The house was quiet, safe, and strong once more. But Eleanor knew one thing for certain. Money can be protected. Documents can be changed. But scars left by betrayal, those never fade.